So, I'm not going to kind of read over this whole thing, but essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create a invented room. Okay, so a lot of times I get people from who are taking the class who are interior design majors, and so this is a really helpful one for them. But no matter what you're doing, it's, I think, really good to be able to kind of create a fantasy-based interior, or exterior, or whatever the case may be, because it will help you when you draw things in real life, which we'll get to later, okay, after this project. So it's essentially an invented room that we're going to be creating, the corner of a room, okay? And I went all over all this stuff with you, your perspective relative to the world, right? So there's you, straight on view, looking at the world at a skewed perspective, right? Nothing is parallel to your body or your eyes or your shoulders, or however you want to view that, the picture plane that is you looking out into the world. And then the other scenario is that everything in the world is at weird angles to everything else, but everything, in that scenario is a box form, okay? So the drawing we're going to make, this interior view, follows this scenario, the middle one, okay? Where everything is lined up with everything else in the room perfectly, okay? And you just happen to be looking into the corner of the room instead of straight on at one of the walls, okay? Now, it gets real complex in real life, right? So we're kind of oversimplifying things, right? But you'll see how complex it is even when we oversimplify things here. So I'll talk to you about, once we finish here, remind me to do it. There's a particular setup that I want you to engage in here for this drawing, okay? The setup was going to involve using two sheets of paper at either end of your drawing, and I'll walk you through that as well. So we'll get to that. Now, I pulled up a couple of examples here, okay, from last summer that I thought worked pretty well. Let's see here. So this is a first version of a drawing. Let's see if I can find the finished version here. Yeah, that's just the center panel, the finished version of the center panel. Pretty cool drawing. Nice sense of space, really open floor there. So all these things you're going to think about. How did the artist get that sense of openness in this drawing? Okay. Let's pull up another one that may be a little different in vibe. Let's see here. Yeah, so that one's a little different. See how close everything seems to us, the viewer, in this scenario, right? Cool drawing. They're both very cool drawings, but one has a radically different feel than the other, right? Much more open, expansive sense of space, tighter field of view. So they're both 18 by 24 sheets of paper with the addition of these two wings, which I'll get to later on either side. So how is it that one feels closer to us and the other one doesn't? Feels like we're in a smaller, cramped room and the other one doesn't. How's the artist showing that? What are they doing to make the drawing look like that? Why does this feel so open, but this feels like we're close to the wall, the corner of the room?
The size of the door?
It has its size, relative to the sheet of paper, right? So obviously the door in this one's much bigger, right? Very good. The door in this one, relative to the overall composition, much smaller, right? How about the walls themselves? i.e., focusing on that corner of the room. which one is larger relative to the overall composition? This drawing or this drawing? Longer, in other words. Relative to the composition. Relative to the space on the drawing. Whose line is longer on their drawing? The line denoting the corner of the room.
This drawing.
This drawing, the corner of the room is longer. This line right here. That line that denotes the corner of the room, right? Is longer, takes up more space, right? More vertical space on this drawing than it does on this drawing.
No.
What is it then? The other way around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the other way around, right? Yeah. So that's kind of how these things play tricks on our brains, right? This seems like a bigger room, right? So what we translate that as is that, that's, the walls might be taller, it's just more expansive, right? So yes, indeed, that's how the artists are achieving that different, is it a conscious thing? Maybe not, but it just so happens that you want it to be conscious, right? So and that's a nice example too. So we're going to do furniture. You can cut holes in the wall, whatever you want to do there in this drawing. Okay. So here's what happens when you don't obey the vanishing points, which we'll get to. I'm going to do a illustration for you, but notice in your drawings, in these drawings, every horizontal line, right? Every horizontal relationship you create in the drawing must adhere to one or the other vanishing points. And the student in this scenario started over here on the right side. Looks like they were calling that a vanishing point. And then with the walls at any rate that they were drawing, and they called this a vanishing point over here. But then they started improvising and taking these angles of these certain items that they're drawing, like the piano over here. They started playing and just free-forming it, right? They weren't adhering to the vanishing point. So what happens, it starts to look like a fun house because the common set of rules that the drawing needs are being violated. Okay, this is the beauty of linear perspective. It creates a common set of rules that everything in the drawing live by. So it creates consistency, right? This is why rules are good in art. Okay, and then once you know them, you can break them, right? So, so this is what will happen. Notice like the top of the door is not going to any vanishing point, etc., etc. It's kind of the horizon line is the line in red, right? So we know the two vanishing points have to live on there. So these little circles in green that I put here are kind of circles that the artist was inventing, new vanishing points that they were kind of unaware of that they were kind of inventing, because it didn't feel right to them to go all the way out to these two vanishing points all the way out to the edges of the paper. Okay, so that's what happens when you don't pay attention to the rules. Okay. This is what happens when you do pay attention to the rules. Everything has that really cool look to it. Everything feels like we're standing way back from it. There's a real convincing sense of space, etc., etc. Okay. Okay. So we'll talk about all this stuff individually eventually. So now let's get going with the drawing here. So I'm going to walk you through. How to make the drawing, okay? So it's just going to be a corner of the room. So it's, in essence, you're going to be inside of a box, okay? Now I have this set up so that you can see that. So that I put one vanishing point over here and one vanishing point over here, all the way out as far as I could get with those vanishing points. That's really important. That's why some in the 2-point drawings we did with where the vanishing points were on the same sheet of paper as the boxes we were drawing, they look a little distorted like a fisheye lens. That's because the vanishing points were too close to the objects that are being drawn. In real life situations, vanishing points exist way outside, generally speaking, in a 2-point scheme, not a 1-point scheme, because the vanishing point in a 1-point scheme is usually behind the objects you're looking at, right? Like the railroad track scenario. In a 2-point scheme, they go way outside of the picture that is being drawn to make it look natural, okay? So we're going to add 2 pieces of paper to our 18 by 24 sheet of paper, which is denoted by this middle panel here, okay? And I'll go over how I want you to add those, all right? And that will get our, excuse me, vanishing points all the way off of the edge of the paper. Okay, so it'll look more natural. Okay, so now let's draw the corner of the room. So we're sitting inside of the box now, rather than looking at the box from the outside. So if you're in your room looking into the corner of your room, okay, kind of do a little, you can even do it while you're sitting there if you can kind of look into the corner of the room. If the room is big enough, how many planes will you see?
Four.
That's correct. Yep. How many planes are there in a box or a cube?
6.
6. Yeah. So you're not gonna see the 2 back walls, right? Essentially, unless you're like all the way maybe up, and you can see them in your peripherally, and you're like right into the corner of the room. So we got to draw 4 planes. They represent the 2 walls and the ceiling and the floor. Okay, so we're sitting inside the box, and we're going to draw 4 planes, right? So how do we start our drawing? How do we start the exterior boxes, the 2-point boxes?
The corner, the line of the first corner.
Yep, the vertical line, right? That vertical line where the 2 walls meet, right? So let's do that. So you just here's where you got to use your the imagination a little bit in terms of make sure I got blue there. Scale, like we talked about. Like if you draw the corner of the room and you make it this big on your drawing, are you going to have any room to put anything on the floor?
Probably just a lamp, but no.
In the corner of the room, right? Yeah, so by the time you draw the walls, right, which I'll get to in a second, corner of the room there, you're not going to have much room for anything on that floor, right? Conversely, what if you drew the corner of your room this big? Would that look like a natural room in a house? It's not in a house I've ever lived in, but
No.
no, it's so far away. It's almost like a gymnasium, right? That corner of that room is so far away from us, it would be way too expansive. Okay? So you got to find a happy medium somewhere when you're creating your drawings, okay? Number 1. Number 2, what if I placed it over here? Which wall would I see more of?
Right wall?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so its position left-right is important to think about, right? So its size, i.e. how much of the room you want to show, its position left and right. Do I want to show more of the right wall, more of the left wall? Okay. And then there's one more thing to think about in terms of putting this line down. What do you think that is? Notice the first thing I did. What's the first thing I did on this drawing, by the way, before I even am considering the vertical line that's a corner in the room?
The horizon line?
That's right, the horizon line. So that horizon line represents what?
Eye level?
Eye level, that's correct. So I'm going to do a couple scenarios here. I'm going to do scenario number 1 and scenario number 2. Which scenario, here's scenario number 1. There's scenario number 1. Here's scenario number 2. Which scenario, scenario number 1 or scenario number 2, would create a drawing from the viewpoint of the floor? The person would be sitting on the floor.
1.
Yep. Why is that?
Second one.
You like you were looking up?
Yeah, like where is the horizon line intersecting that vertical line or the corner of the room?
It's closer to the bottom of the vertical line. So.
That means that the eye level then, okay, that's correct. That means the eye level is low down relative to the corner of that room. Remember, it's not where you're looking. Okay, this is, remember I talked a little bit about this in terms of positioning eye level. It's not where you're looking, it's where your head is relative to the room. So look around the room, you guys look around the room right now where you're sitting, okay? And guesstimate, just guesstimate, how high is your head in the room? Below halfway or above halfway? Let's just kind of keep it simple here.
Below.
So you're saying your head is below halfway point or half the height of the room. And probably that's correct for most of us, right? Unless the room is really short or we're setting up on a tall ladder or something, right? So if you were to draw the room that you're sitting in from your current perspective, you would position the initial corner of the room in such a way that the horizon line intersected the corner of the room, which is far away from you, a little below halfway. And you see what, here's halfway. Okay? So when you first set this drawing up, where the positioning, so the scale, the size of the thing, its position left and right, but also its position up and down will dictate the point of view of the drawing. Okay, so let me, well, first I want to ask you what to do, and then I'm going to give you a couple scenarios to show you what I'm talking about there. So let's put the corner of the room in, okay? I wouldn't put it all the way over here because I'd like you to have some room on the left wall versus the right wall. So you could put a little off center if you want to, so let's start. Now, you could make a drawing from the standpoint of, because it's invented, right? We're making this up. From the standpoint of you standing, which might look something like that, higher than halfway, right? Everybody see what I just did there? So I changed the point of view from below halfway to higher than halfway. Why is this higher than halfway now? What gives you that indication that this drawing will be from the point of view of the viewer being higher than halfway the height of the room? How do you know that just from this amount of information on the drawing?
Horizon line is above halfway.
Yeah, it's intersecting the thing we're looking at, the corner of the room, above halfway, meaning our point of view. Remember, the horizon line isn't out there somewhere. The horizon, the horizon line is like a construct in our brain. It's giving a sense of point of view to the drawing, okay? That's why I kind of want you to disown that notion that the horizon line is just where the sky and the ground meet, okay? It's a construct. It's an artificial construct that's going to give us consistency in the drawing. Okay, so now let's draw the top of the left wall. How would I do that?
Connect the vertical line that you did to the right vanishing point.
Okay, so you're saying connect the top here, right? I assume you're talking
Or
about.
continue it through there.
Yeah. So you're saying, so let's go back to our little point things, okay? Remember, we have a line here. So when we created our boxes, we needed to know we need to do something with this and this. So what you're saying is take this point right here and do what with it? You're right. I got to do something with that point because that's going to be up there somewhere where the corner of the room is. What do I do with it, do you say?
If you take the vanishing point from the right vanishing point and then draw a line from there to the top.
Yeah. So you're saying extend a line from here.
But continue it past that point.
From infinity, right? I don't think I can do it with this. I'll do it with it. Let me do it with this one. So you're saying take my ruler. Here you got to use the yardstick because it's so far away. That's why I wanted you to get a yardstick. And extend a line through that point, right? And then what do I do with it?
Continue it to
the edge of the drawing, which is right there, right? Yeah, because we're just focusing on this area right here. Okay. How do I draw the top of the right wall?
do the same with the left point.
So from the left vanishing point. Very good. And then wherever it leaves the paper, it leaves the paper. Now we got this crisscross thing happening, right? Okay. So we don't need this line. Boom. That's outside of the room. Nor do we need this line. Right? So you could either lay your ruler down and not mark those, or draw them very lightly. So in essence, what we're doing here, let me back it up. Is to draw the right wall or left wall. We come from infinity, the opposite vanishing point, hit the where the corner of the room is, and draw the angle of that. So this angle is determined by the relationship of this vanishing point to this point right here, right? Conversely, right wall from the left vanishing point. I'm just doing what I just did there. And that gives me the angle of the top of the wall. How about the bottom of the left wall?
Just the same thing, but on the bottom of the vertical.
Same exact thing. Coming from the right vanishing point into the room, and that gives me the proper angle. Come from the left vanishing point into the room, gives me the proper angle. Now that's a good job with that, because here's what I get, the students will default back to looking at the cube from the exterior. So they'll do this instead. They'll go back to, oh yeah, well, if it's moving to the left from the corner, it's going to go down to there, right? And usually I do this with students, and I walk through the whole thing, and we end up with an exterior cube again, right? So it's just the opposite when you're inside of the cube. Everything on the left wall comes from the right vanishing point, and vice versa. Okay, so let me draw a couple scenarios for you now. Here's a room that is the result of laying on the floor. So I come from the right vanishing point, right, to draw the bottom of the left wall. I don't know why that's not starting right where it needs to. So notice how flat the angles are for the bottoms of the wall. Why is there no angle to this line or this line? But it's really horizontal.
That's kind of where your eye level is.
Yeah, it's close to the horizon line, right? You know, anything that's at the horizon line is going to be a straight line across on your drawing, right? So if your head could be in the floor would just be a straight line across. Okay, that's going to give it perspective. So if I were to draw, you know, this room, number one, it's like far away from me because it's a small corner of the room. But number two, you know, my head's close to the floor. So if I were to draw a carpet, let's say, laying on the floor here in this room. I'm kind of guesstimating here with this angle here, but oh, it hit there. So it looks something like that. So things get really, you know, stretched out on that floor, right? Because of that sense of perspective. And that's what reality would offer you if you were laying on the floor looking across a big room like this, okay? Let's do the opposite. We're sitting on a ladder. So my eye level is at ceiling height. Just the opposite happens. The ceiling now gets really low because my eye level is up way high relative to the relative to the ceiling. And then these start to angle more. You know my program does this automatically, right? Because I have these vanishing points over here. So that's why I don't have to stretch to them. Now see how steep the angles of the floor are, right? So it feels like we're looking down into the space now, right? Makes sense, right? Because our head's high up relative to the corner of the room. So wherever you position that, that first vertical line will determine scale, and it'll also determine, you know, how much the left and right walls you're seeing. But more importantly, it's going to determine the eye level you want to create in this room, right? Okay, the sense of perspective, the point of view. Okay, any questions about that? So I would advise you to, I think it's a little bit easier to, it depends how you want to create this drawing, but you know, it's a hit and miss thing. You work a little bit and it's like, I don't like this, I'm going to make it smaller, bigger, whatever. Whatever you do the first time in a drawing is usually not the right thing, right? So you got to kind of be flexible as an artist and kind of erase, right? And then add some more. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say my eye level is a little bit higher than halfway the height of the wall, okay? Now I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here so you can kind of see it a little bit better. Because you know that I'm projecting to those vanishing points out there. So my eye level a little higher than halfway of the wall. Halfway would be something like that, maybe. Okay. And I'm giving myself enough room for the floor and ceiling as well. So we'll go back to what we just did. Let's build the room here. So we're looking into the corner of the room. Now let's put a door in this wall right here. How would I do that? A doorway into another room. Let's build a doorway into another room.
You could start with 2 vertical lines.
Yep, 2 edges of the door, that's correct. I'm going to leave some room for a chair over here, so I'm going to put the doorway. Now, would the doorway be higher than my eye level?
Slightly higher.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be hitting my head every time I went through it. Right? So obviously, the doors are higher than our eye level, which is our head level, right? So think about those sort of things as you make your drawing. You know, be kind of, think logically through these things. Okay. Now, how about the top of the door? How do I do that?
It's the same as the line underneath it.
That's right. Very good. So see this line right here? Which is...
when we're making the rooms, are we using a vantage point to create them, or are we just doing it by freehand?
No, you have to... Remember, I said I have this program that every mark I make, if I click this thing right here, every mark I make is beholden to left and right vanishing points. Okay. So if I make a mark on this drawing, and I go towards the right vanishing point, it's going to angle up to that. I don't have to draw the line all the way up there. Okay. In your drawing, you're going to have to connect every line you make to either the right vanishing point or the left vanishing point, unless it's what type of line?
Vertical.
That's correct. Yep, absolutely correct. Yep. So, does that answer your question, Quentin?
Yeah, are the vantage points always going to be on the horizon line?
A vanishing point is always on the horizon line, except for that scenario I showed you with the Escher drawing, which is a 3-point vanishing point, where the vanishing point, because he's looking down on the building, right? That's a 3-point scheme, and the vanishing point's not on the line there. But for our purposes, 1-point scheme, 2-point scheme, or multi-vanishing point scheme in a 2-point scenario where things are shifted at different angles from one another, the vanishing points are always on the horizon line. Right? And that's what I did here. I put them right here and right here. Okay. Now in your drawing, which I'll get to after I do the demo, I'm going to talk to you about how to do these extensions here. But the reason they're not on the drawing, they're not like right here, for instance. I had students do this before. They go through the process of putting these extra sheets of paper on their drawing, and then they put the vanishing points back on the drawing again. The reason they're all the way out here is because it makes it more natural. Okay, so to answer your question, every line I'm drawing here is going to one or the other vanishing points. Okay. Now in your case, you're going to have to literally take your yardstick on the same side as the yardstick, line it up with that vanishing point, and go swivel it so that it's at a point you want to make the line on your drawing, and then make your angle. And then as you would move the yardstick around to draw different items in your drawing, it's going to pivot around that particular vanishing point. Same with the other one. Okay, so your yardstick's always going to be glued literally to one or the other vanishing points, depending which direction of horizontal line you're drawing. Okay. Now you brought up the idea of, you said, aptly so, that the top line here has to go to the same vanishing point as the bottom, right? So because it's on that same wall, right? Essentially. So yes, indeed, you would take your yardstick and line it. Let's say you want to start the doorway right here. You take your yardstick, line it up with this point right here, back over to this vanishing point here, and strike your line. I don't have to do that because I got this nifty little program that'll do it for me, right? Okay, but since we're doing hands-on drawing, you're going to have to use the yardstick to kind of line these things up. Okay, does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a good question.
I was confused because I forgot that the lines we were drawing to the vantage points were reversed when you're inside of an object.
Yes, yeah,
It
yeah.
didn't look like it was going to the right points.
And that's the tricky part here, okay? And that's why people start inventing their own angles and they don't adhere to any of those vanishing points anymore. Sometimes students will do that because they're getting so confused, like, oh, I'm just going to draw this thing like like it feels it should be drawn, right? You know, so, but that's why that one drawing I showed you, like all the things were going in different directions, right? So these two vanishing points are giving you a structure to the drawing, right? A consistency to everything, all right? And it's not dissimilar from what would happen if you were to stand back in a big room and look into the corner of the room. There would be vanishing points that you could trace back to. We'll talk about that next week. If you were to figure out the angles of everything, you could find vanishing points if you took the time to do that. So, and again, they're still a construct, right? But they're a construct that help us deal with geometric forms in space, okay? Okay, so Quentin's right. The top of the doorway goes down to the left vanishing point because the bottom of the doorway is going up to the left vanishing point. So you can see how those two lines that are parallel to each other in reality, top of a door opening, bottom of a door opening, parallel to each other in reality, converge as they move back into space to the left vanishing point in this scenario. Okay? Okay. So since we're going to make this a doorway, we don't need to have this bottom anymore, right? So we could erase that away. We're going to make it go into the other room here. Make another room. Okay. We'll draw the other room in a second. But first, before we draw the other room, we need to talk a little bit about the wall. The doorway lives in a wall, right? Have I shown thickness of the wall yet? No. Since the doorway is a hole cut out of the wall, this gives me an opportunity to show how thick the wall is. If you look at doorways in your house, you see that they have a thickness. It's like usually the walls are 4 inches wide or 6 inches wide, depending upon what the studs they used, right? So the doorway, the interior part of the doorway, has a thickness to it, right? Which represents the thickness of the wall. So how would I do that on this drawing? Right now, I just have a simple rectangle. I'm not showing thickness of the wall. I'm not showing the thickness of the wall that the door is cut out of.
Connect the endpoints of the left side vertical line of the door to the right endpoint, vanishing point.
Yeah.
So that's like a face.
Yeah, you could do it that way. I could do one of two things. That's very good. So what you're saying is take this point. Remember, points are interesting and helpful for us, right? So let me go back to my drawing tool. I've got 4 points right here, of a shape, right, that I need to think about. Here, and here. But was that you, Cherry, that said that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you're saying is take this point right here and this point right here and do what with them?
Connect those to the right vanishing point.
Yeah. And why would it be the right vanishing point?
Because you wouldn't really see that face if you connected to the left side.
Yeah, so we go the same direction as the wall, right? You know, so you have two choices. So what Cherry's saying is, I've got to go in this line right here that's the front of the wall that the door's in, already goes up to this left vanishing point. So it wouldn't make sense for me to show the thickness of the doorway here by going back up in the same direction. I go the opposite direction, into that space. Do the same here. Into that space. Notice that is like real subtle, right? Because it's closer to the horizon line. Okay? That's one way of doing it. Here's another way of doing it. You could determine which side this this side of the doorway or this side of the doorway, you'd see the thickness of the doorway. Which side? Left side or right side? If you're looking into the corner of the room and the door's there. Do we see the thickness of the doorway on this side or this side?
Left side.
On the left side, right? Yep, right here. So you could just draw a line down to begin with if you wanted to. I kind of like them really thick. I like thick walls. I like to, so don't make things, the moment you start to make things too skinny in your drawing, it gets real hard to do all these angles, right? So I try to overemphasize that. So there is a inside in our side of the wall vertical, and the other side of the room, the other side of the doorway vertical. And then all you'd have to do is just what Cherry said to do, connect that. Now here's a common mistake that folks will make, by the way, so be careful about that. So they'll get this done beautifully, they'll get this vertical done beautifully, and then what they'll do is they'll just do a 45-degree angle right there, confusing it with the frame around the doorway. Okay? It's not a frame. We're cutting a hole in the wall. So don't do that. That angle has to conform to the vanishing point, okay? That will give you the proper point right there. Let me zoom in a little bit. And then you just connect those two. Okay? So what that does is give you just the thinnest of sliver for the underneath part of the doorway, right? So I take that point, come from the left vanishing point, because I'm running in the same direction as this line, right? It's just the other side of the doorway. Oop. I'm coming from the left vanishing point and drawing the thinnest little sliver there. That's all we see of the up underneath part of that doorway. Isn't it odd that we see way more of this than we do of this little area right here? Why do we see so little of this underneath part? That's the way it is, though. If you were to look in your house, you'd see that. I'm looking over here right now in my doorway, and I see way more of the side of it than I do the underneath part of it. Yet they're the same width.
Just the angle?
It's your point of view, yeah. It's like my head is like almost as high as this thing, right? So this is going to be, my cursor go. My head is almost as high as the opening of the doorway. So that plane that's shooting in, right, the thickness of the doorway itself is really foreshortened. So it's really crunched down. But I'm looking more straight on at the plane that's vertical, right, the inside of the doorway. This is like, so your brain is starting to kind of function in a different way now. You're starting to kind of see planes and geometric forms, how they open up to you in reality, which is a good thing. It makes you a better artist, right? You're observing the world in a more subtle way. So all this stuff is really good. Okay, but yeah, because your eye is literally closer in to the top of the doorway height-wise, right, than it is when you're looking at this area right here. Okay, because we're looking at this more straight on, not so here. Not so with that upper portion. Because here's what I would get normally is that people would create the same. Let me do a real quick doorway just to show you. So get this right. They'll get this right. They'll get this right. They'll get this right. They'll get this right. And then here's where it gets tricky. Now they desperately want the underneath part of this doorway to be the same size as the side of it. Why? Because they know it's that way in reality. So here's what they'll do, which is in keeping with that 45-degree angle I just did. They'll do this. and then just put that 45-degree angle in there. All right, see the difference between the two? Okay, so the knowledge of the underneath part is the same width as the side drives them to make it the same on the drawing, and then they just kind of split the difference with this 45-degree angle. Okay, this is what the vanishing points provide you, this opportunity to draw in a more realistic fashion. Okay. Okay. Now let's draw the room, make a room next door there. I want the room next door to be the same height as this wall right here, you know. So how would I draw where the floor and the wall in the next room come together? I want a wall in this next room over here that's an extension of this wall.
You just keep drawing the line in the same direction?
Yep, this line right here, right? I would just keep going with this through, I'll just do it, pretend this wall's transparent, right? The wall that the doorway's in. It would just keep going, and then where it pokes out here, that's where I would see it, right? Okay, that makes sense? So I'll just draw a line of projection here so you can kind of, that's where we don't see it. And then when it pokes out, that's where we do see it. So how about the ceiling of that wall? Would we see the ceiling?
No.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Let's like here it is, right? Just miss it, right? So you don't have to worry about that. Let's put a corner in this room. Let's make this area a corner that we can see through the doorway. How would we do that?
Make a vertical line first.
Yep.
So you want the corner to be?
Right. So I'll just say, oh, I can see the corner there. And we don't have to worry about the ceiling because we won't see it, right? So it just ends right there. So how do I make that in? How do I finish up the corner of the room there?
Take out the bottom line and trace it to
To which vanishing point?
Left one?
Yeah, left one. This one going the right one, right? You only have two choices, right? So let's get rid of this one. And we just go back in the right direction from the left vanishing point. So there we made a room through the doorway that we can see. Okay. Okay, any questions so far? Let's do one more object maybe. Then I'll let you start working. Any questions? So there's the corner of our room with the doorway into another room. Okay. Now the sky's the limit. I had a student, I was a drawing 2 student, made doorway after doorway after doorway into kind of these labyrinths of rooms, you know. It gets real tricky, but if you kind of slow down enough, you can do that sort of thing, right? The sky's the limit in terms of your inventiveness here, okay? It doesn't have to look like my drawing, but I do want you to jump through some hoops so I can kind of see that you're conceptually understanding this stuff. So let's do a fireplace with a mantle above it, okay? Now, the reason I mentioned that it's kind of wise to do your horizon line a little higher than halfway. By the way, the horizon line I put on the drawing overall is about 2/3 the height of the drawing, right? And then when I positioned the corner of the room, I made sure that there was the horizon line intersected the corner of the room just above halfway. That gives me more leeway to kind of play with stuff below the horizon line, because it gets real tricky, as you guys well know, when you get towards the horizon line. These planes start to really become foreshortened, right? So I would advise you to kind of keep the horizon line a little higher than halfway on your wall, just to give you some space to put furniture in and stuff down here without it being too weird, okay? And again, you can play around with the sense of depth and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't. This is relatively close. The corner of the room seems to us, but if you want a kind of more expansive view, it's up to you. You want to do the door on the left wall, etc., however you want to do it. Okay, let's put a fireplace in here, and then we'll send you on your way to start working on this. So let's create the firebox first, which is that area in the wall that the fireplace, kind of lives in. So how would I start that out?
2 vertical lines.
Yep. So it's just rectangular shape, just like the doorway, right? Yep. Very good. 2 vertical lines. And again, scale is important here, right? So we need to think about that. And I would say maybe half the height of the doorway, so I'm kind of looking over at the doorway there as I draw these things. Now, how do I finish this shape off? To which vanishing point do I go?
Right one, and
Mm-hmm.
then the left vertical line.
So from this dot here, project to the right vanishing point. I'm going in the same direction as the top and bottom of the wall, right? So whatever you took the top, because this fireplace is in that wall, whatever you went to with that wall, just go to with the new shape you're drawing, okay? How do I know that this rectangular shape I just drew is part of the wall, the left wall?
It's sharing the bottom line.
Exactly. So that gives us a point of reference, okay? We know this new shape is on a certain plane that we drew, which is the wall, because it's sharing a line in common. Well, can't make an X with this tool, but it's sharing a line in common, right? Okay. Which is that. Okay. So as we well know, things are multidimensional. There's nothing in the world that's just a plane. It has another dimension. It has thickness. Even a sheet of paper has thickness, right? So, so we got 4 points here. And what I want you to do is build a cube or box into the wall. We've drawn one side of that box that's on the wall because we know that it's sharing a line in common right there, right? So how would I finish the cube off? I need to now draw a 6-sided figure that's in the wall, going into the wall.
Connect the 4 points to the left vanishing point.
Yep. So all I'm going to do, I don't know how far I'm going to go yet, but those 4 points, because they're going into the wall, they're going the opposite direction of the bottom of the wall, which is going to the right vanishing point. They're moving at a right angle to that. So they're going back into the wall. I don't know how long to make them yet. Up to the left vanishing point. Now here's how I approach this. I look, pretending the wall that I'm drawing this fireplace in or putting the box into isn't there. I'm going to ask myself, what's the closest plane to me other than the first one I did, which is the opening right here. And it's usually this side right here, right? So always go to the side that's a little closer and figure that out first. So how do I finish this side or this plane off that's moving into the wall or behind the wall?
Vertical line.
Yep. So I'm just going to decide how deep I want it to be, right? And just put a vertical line down. So maybe something like that. Now what do I do with these two new points that I've created? One here and one here.
Connect
Them
with
with the,
oh, sorry, you can go.
the right vantage point.
Yep, just go in the opposite direction, right? So there you go. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Yep. So this one the same. I ignore that line. This is way behind it, right? This line I'm drawing is way behind that front corner. And stop right there, right? So you don't know how deep to make these until you start to kind of finish this off. And then if you've done everything correctly, pretty close probably, that should be directly above that. Now you can see if you start to play with, you know, we had some problems with this, people not getting vertical, right? So the moment you start wavering on this idea of absolute vertical, this stuff won't hook together. You won't be able to have these points meet each other, okay? Now, a way to measure whether you're absolutely vertical with a particular edge is kind of just compare it to the edge of the piece of paper, which happens to be right there, right? My tool does it automatically, right? So I don't have to worry about it, okay? So I'm going to kind of erase away these. I don't need those anymore. Now, which lines? I want to see your work, okay? But lightly erase away stuff you wouldn't actually see. So what wouldn't I actually see in this cutout box, this box that's going into the wall? What lines can I get rid of?
Any line outside the original rectangle, or
Yeah, any line that doesn't exist in this shape that I drew right there, right? Very good. Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it. I never explained it that way. This original shape, which is the hole in the wall, anything that exists outside of that, so all this stuff could go away. So too, we're going to say that the floor of the fireplace is at the same level as the floor of the room. So we don't need that line anymore. Unless you want to raise your fireplace up with, you know, putting another smaller cube in there or something. I'll let you be the judge of how you want to do that. But because some people get really kind of fancy with this drawing, which is cool. Yeah, I don't need all this stuff, right? I'll kind of just leave it there vaguely, right? And I kind of want to see your work too. So if you could kind of leave it there a little bit, it gets kind of confusing, but if you could leave some remnant of that, so I know what you're doing there, okay? So what we're left with is a chunk cut out of the wall. And we never really would be able to understand how much of this back part of the fireplace we would see, etc., unless we really drew the cube, right? Understood how to draw the cube in space, you know. Okay, so let's do one more thing here. A mantle. Maybe we'll see. Let me see what the time is. So we're at a little over an hour, so. So here's the opening, okay? And then here's the back side. We just see the little bit of that inside corner of the opening of the fireplace. Okay, let's put a mantle on the wall. You know what I'm talking about, a mantle, like a big wooden kind of plinth coming out. Sometimes they're marble, sometimes they're plaster. So we're going to start by drawing a rectangle that's the shape of the mantle. And we have to draw it on the wall, right? We don't want to draw the front of the mantle and work back to the wall. You draw from what you know, which is the wall you have, and work outward, okay? This is tricky. This is why I'm having to cut a hole in the wall and bring an object out from the wall, all in the same kind of drawing. So how would I approach drawing the shape of the box coming out from the wall? How do I start it?
Draw it.
Line with the coming from the left vantage point from the top of the box.
Yes, from the left vanishing point, which would be out here. If I'm coming from here, I'm automatically either going into the wall or out from the wall. But I first need to draw a shape that's on the wall before I know how to come out from the wall. So I got to draw I'm drawing the back of the mantle first. How would I approach that? I can't do anything out here yet, but eventually, yes, Quentin, you're right, we need to project out from the wall. But before we do that, we got to draw the shape of the thing, a simple plane.
So a vertical?
Yeah, two verticals, right? We're going to say it's the same width as the fireplace, okay? And if you want to keep it simple like that, that's a good way of kind of approaching it. So a vertical here. Now I'm still on the wall. How do I know I'm still on the wall with these marks I'm making? How do I know those marks, those two extensions I made are still on the wall?
Because they're connected to the two vertical lines, which are in turn connected to the bottom.
Yeah, the elbow is connected to the shoulder bone is connected to the... Yeah, so, yeah, we knew that these two lines are on the wall because it was part of a rectangle we drew, which was part of that, had a line in common there, right? So, yeah, it's just an extension there, so correct. So how do we finish this rectangular shape now? It's the back of the mantle, not the front.
Same thing as the fireplace. Connect the, finish off the,
Top of it?
yeah.
Yes, the top, right, yeah. Yeah, so just, yeah, finishing off that shape, right? Here's the shape. Boom, 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 boom. So there's the back of the rectangle right there. How do I know that shape is part of the wall, is on the wall? Kind of an extension of the last question I asked. Because this shape now that I have right here, four-sided plane, right, has a line in common with the original, which is the bottom of it, right there, which had a line in, that whole shape had a shared line in common with the wall itself. So there's a building block process, right, from drawing from the known to the unknown. Okay. Okay. Now we got our 4 points we can kind of denote. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do I do with those 4 points now?
You do what I was saying?
Yep, project them from the left vanishing point out into the space, right? That's correct. Yep. So you'd line your ruler up with every one of those points and then out to the vanishing point, right? And you project outward. Let me blow this up just a little bit here. So I'm coming from the left vanishing point over here. Now I don't have to lay my ruler down, right? Because I got this tool that does it automatically. That gives me the proper angle there. 1, I don't know how far yet. 2, 3, 4. So how do I finish this cube off now?
You make 2 vertical lines.
Yep, I make 1 vertical line because I don't know. Like let's say that I want the mantle to stick out. I'm again going to start with the side that I know is closest to me, which is this side of the mantle right here, okay? So I'm just going to project a line straight down till it meets this. Not quite long enough, but let's see here. There we go. Now I have 2 points right here. 1. What do I do with those 2 points? 2.
Draw them to the right vantage point and then make the vertical line wherever they connect.
That's correct. Yeah, I don't know how long to make this, so I can't just put a line down there. I won't know that until I fit all the pieces of the puzzle together, i.e. lay my ruler down up to the right vanishing point and project a line in the right direction, not downward. Be going up to the right vanishing point. And that doesn't stop there, right? It just keeps going until it hits that. Okay. Same here. So it doesn't always work out, but pretty close. So that's pretty close. And then they're like right above one another, right? So just drop a plumb. And now can you see the transparent cube that I drew that's coming out of the wall now? Right? So thinking in terms of, that's why I had you guys really focus on transparency, right? This issue of transparency is really important. If I don't understand how to draw the cube from its backside, right, up against the wall outward, I wouldn't know where it was out here, right? I'd have to kind of take a guess, and then I'd work my way back, and my angles wouldn't be right. So always thinking in terms of transparency is really important here. Now, what lines do we get rid of? Because we want to make this mantle, and it's not a glass mantle, it's a wooden mantle. So I got to get rid of some lines.
Any lines behind like the front?
Yep, this front plane that I drew right here, right? So I get rid of all this stuff. I'm losing, by the way, my original opening of the fireplace, right? And that kind of is an unsettling idea. Is I'm undoing something I spent a lot of time figuring out where it was. But, you know, so don't worry about that. Things overlap other things in life all the time, right? It makes it for a more interesting drawing. So we get rid of all that. And definitely anything that I couldn't see through this side here, right? So all this stuff would go. Okay. And this up here, just that little sliver right there. Okay. So now we've drawn a cube coming out of the wall. Right? And part of that cube is hiding the opening of the cube we cut into the wall. So now you have a place to put, you know, kind of a vase with flowers setting, you know. But look how foreshortened the top of that mantle is, right? You would never be able to figure that out unless you had these 2 vanishing points there to help you figure it out. Now it's oversized a little bit, but you know, who cares? You know, it's okay. But I'm doing that just to kind of show you. So let's put a rug on the floor that's both the same size as the opening of the fireplace and the doorway, and in front of each. How would I do that? A little throw rug that's the same size as the opening of the fireplace. And the doorway, and that's in front of each one of them. How would I do that? Anybody?
So like a rug that's the same size as the opening of the fireplace and the doorway?
Yep, and that's right in front of each one of them. That's positioned right smack dab in front of each one of them.
Oh, extend the lines of the bottom of the fireplace forward and then do the same thing for the doorway.
Yep.
So there's like a crisscross on the floor.
That's
That would
right.
probably
Yep.
be-
Yep, so I'm coming out across the floor, right? I'm moving out from the wall. So which vanishing point do I come from for this?
Left.
Left, right? So left, right, yeah, left, yes, that's correct. I don't know how far to go. Same with this one. Now how do I position the rug in front of the doorway?
Extend the two lines so it crisscrosses the lines that are already extended from the fireplace.
Right. Out from the doorway, right? From the right vanishing point. See how these vanishing points give us a consistency. So we're just kind of stretching a line out from the doorway. Now what that does is gives us a shape that's right here. Same size as the fireplace. And right in front of it. And same size as the doorway and right in front of that. Okay, so using that plane of the floor and these points of reference right here, boom, boom, those are the points where the fireplace and the door hit the floor. So that's where we would project from. Now let's make this into a table, a little table. How would I do that? So I'm making a table now that's going to be the same width as a doorway and same width as a fireplace in front of each, rather than a rug.
Make a cube based on.
Yep, so what do I start with? I have the bottom of the cube drawn, so what do I do?
Verticals.
Yep.
Vertical line.
Vertical lines. I don't know how tall yet, so I'm just going to make them randomly big here. Now look I'm starting to overlap things, right? So I'm going to lose part of that wall back there. So what? Makes for a more interesting drawing. Now I want this table to be half the height of the fireplace. How do I determine that?
Mark halfway on the actual fireplace and then extend that line so you know
Yep.
where it reaches.
So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to just guesstimate where the halfway point would be, maybe right there, something like that. Everybody can see that, right? Then I take that point and project it from the left vanishing point. Let me lighten this up a little bit. Out into space, towards the table I want to build. So here's the left, this will be the left side. Let me lighten that up just a little bit more. Now that gives me the height. It gives me a visual height, right? Notice that this shape, as I'm drawing it, as it's moving out, it's probably getting a little wider, right? As it moves towards us, which it should. So the distance from here to here, if I were to literally measure it on my piece of paper, would be bigger than the distance from here to here, but that's fitting because the fireplace is further away from us. Right? So embedded in this is this idea of those things move away, they get smaller, right? Collapsibility, you know. So now I have a left plane drawn of my table. Right here, I'll show you where it is. Let me go a little darker yet. Might be too thick. That's okay. There. And right there. So I could kind of erase away this. I don't need this anymore. Won't see any of that. Probably won't see the fireplace here. Let's lighten that up a little bit. Alright, so what do I do now to finish this cube off that's the table? I've got the left plane drawn and the bottom plane.
I do the draw the to the right vantage point.
Yep, I got the dot here and the dot here. All I do is go back across space again, right? Till it hits those other two verticals. Boom. Boom. And then go back the other way, right? Hopefully if I've done everything. Yep, look perfect. So there's my cube that's now both half the height of the fireplace and this in front of both the fireplace and the doorway, and the same width as relatively speaking, as those two items, okay? Since I make this into a table, I no longer need, I'm going to kind of get rid of all this stuff. Wouldn't see through there. I don't need the carpet anymore. I could expand it and make it bigger probably, but so now I'm left with a table. So I'm getting rid of the bottom cube, or bottom plane in other words, right? That like looks like it's made of wire or something. So I've got to give it some substance here. So we want to give first the tabletop a sense of substance, meaning some thickness, right? So it could be made of wood, doesn't matter. Now here's how we do the legs. It's just another cube. So the bottom of this leg, this side of this leg would go up to the left vanishing point. The bottom of this side of the leg would go up to the right vanishing point and just take that up. So you see how I kind of made that into this box-like cube figure, right? Same here. We got the outside facing area of that leg. Now how do I draw the other plane that I would see of that leg? I only drew the outside plane right here. I got to draw another side, right? It's going to come in from underneath the table. It's tucking in underneath the table there. And then where it heats the floor, angles up to that other vanishing point. So everything's a cube. Everything has dimension. Likewise over here, the outside facing plane of that leg. The inside facing plane tucks in underneath, and its bottom, where it hits the floor, goes to the left vanishing point. Would I see the fourth leg on the other side?
Yeah.
Yep. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. So it would kind of come a little closer to us and then do the same thing, because it's essentially that line, the initial line I drew is the other side of the cube that's the leg. So it's going to do something like this. Okay. And then we'll make it into a truly opaque table. So we don't need that. Okay. Let's do one more thing here. Let's hang a light from the ceiling right above this table. Does anybody know how to find the middle of a plane? The center of a plane that's receding from you?
Draw like an X?
Yep, that's it exactly. Yep, very good. So all I need to do to find the center of this plane, because I want to hang a light right smack dab over it, okay, in the center, is to draw an X in from corner to corner correct marker here. Corner to corner. Those lines are pretty dark, but I'll do them a little lighter here. That gives me a point right here, which is the visual middle of that plane, where that X comes together, okay? Let me draw that a little lighter just to... So my light's going to hang, I want my light to hang directly above the middle of this table, okay? So I got to find the middle of the table first, which is right here, okay? So what do I do at this point right here to hang a light from the ceiling right above it? I know that's, I want my light to hang right above that point right there. So what do I do with that point?
Make a vertical line.
Yep, make a vertical line. That's correct. I just project a vertical line up from there to the ceiling. Now tell me when I hit the ceiling. Let me know when I hit the ceiling.
That's good.
Okay, so there's a line going right up to the ceiling. How'd you know that that's the place to stop?
I mean, it's on the plane that's on the top. It doesn't, as long as in that plane, it doesn't matter where you stop. I think.
Well, I could have stopped it here, for instance. I could have stopped it there. I could have stopped it here. How do we know where to stop this line moving up there? The plane is up there, that's correct. But how do we know where literally this vertical from this point on the table would hit the ceiling?
Do you draw a line at the right vantage point from that line or something?
Yeah, you got to use one of your vanishing points. That's correct. You do. That is correct. You have to use one of your vanishing points to project across the ceiling. That is correct. You can do one of two things. You can find the center of the doorway or find the center of the opening of the fireplace, okay? So let's say I want to find the center of the doorway. All I do is I project do my X in the doorway opening. So I'm finding the center of the door. Remember the table was lined up with the doorway, right? So if I find the center of that doorway, what do I do at this point right here? The center. The doorway's on the wall, right? It's the same plane as the wall.
You draw a vertical line.
Till what? Till I do what? Till I hit what?
The upper wall.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I know it's an opening, right? But I know that opening is positioned on the wall. So I'm going up the plane of the wall essentially right now. And tell me when I hit the ceiling.
Right there?
Yeah, we know that's the ceiling because that's the terminus of the wall. Right? So what do I do at that point? I have a reference point here now. Right here.
Extend it out from the right vanishing point?
That's correct. I'd come out across the wall, right? I'm coming from the right vanishing point out across the wall. And I'm just going to keep going. I don't know how far to go yet. Now, that gives me a point that's in line with this. Why is this in line with this, which is in line with this? Because we made the table right in front of the doorway in the same width, right? So everything kind of flows around here. So now I can project my line up. Now tell me when I hit the ceiling. Yep, that's it, right there. So now I know for sure. Don't need this anymore. That's where the light would hang from. And I'm just going to draw one of those globe lights, like it's just a circle, right? So I'll put it, right on this line here that's coming down. So I'll put just make it a simple circle. Nice thing about a globe or a sphere is that no matter which angle you look at it, it's just a circle if you're drawing it in a, using just an outline. So we can draw a kind of one of those globe lights hanging here. And here's the cord. Oh. And here's the elliptical form. That's the hardware holding it. Okay. Okay. So those are some complicated moves there. So that's what then we'll come back and we'll finish the drawing by doing a chair or some other stuff once you get so far in this drawing. So the trick is to know how much time to give you and all that sort of stuff. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So these are kind of the hurdles that I want you to jump through. A doorway, a view into another room, a firebox into the wall, a mantel coming out, a table that's in front of either. They don't have to look just like mine. Sky's the limit in terms of being inventive here. But this is kind of the first 3/4 of the drawing, and then we'll finish up with putting a chair in, which is a little bit complicated. And you put couches in or whatever, as you saw in some of those other drawings. So how to set up the drawing. Okay. Real quick little tutorial here for you. Okay, any questions about this, and I'll talk to you about how to set your drawing up. No? Okay. So I'm going to log out of this image. Save. Don't save. Oh, all that work. Don't save. Okay. Okay? Okay. Yep. So you get your center piece of paper, 18 by 24 sheet, and then you're going to just tack 2 wings onto it. So these 2 wings will consist of another 18 by 24 sheet of paper that you'll cut in half, okay? So you're going to cut it half in its vertical dimension. So you're going to end up with 2 sheets that are the same height as this middle one, right? When you cut it in half, you're going to end up with, like, where you cut it, you could fold it and rip it, however you want to do it. But you got 2 clean sides, right? That are the factory sides of your piece of paper be ripped in half, right? Butt those up against the 2 edges of the center sheet of paper, okay? Any questions about that? This is even more confusing than the perspective drawing for folks, and I don't know why, but any question about what I just said there? Center sheet of paper, 18 by 24. Take another 18 by 24, cut it height-wise, okay? All right. so that you got two wings, right? Two sheets of paper. Take those two sheets of paper and line them up, butt them right up against the edges of your full 18 by 24 sheet of paper. But when you butt them up against it, use the clean edges, the factory cut edges, to butt them up, okay? Don't cut up, don't line the scissor cut up, okay, or however you ripped it. Because I want these to be really clean, you know. Because what we'll do is, as we work on these, we'll fold these wings in on the drawing so that we can kind of store it, okay? Because this will probably, we'll take this in the next class period, probably. Now, how do you attach them? So get some tape. And all you do, so once you lay this on a flat surface, could be the floor, you got your big 18 by 24 sheet of paper there, you got the two loose wings, right, that you've cut in half from another 18 by 24 sheet. Take the good side and butt it right up against the full 18 by 24 sheet. So you got these two seams right here, one right here and one right here. Then all you need to do is take some tape and tack it together. And so I would do it maybe in three places. One, two. The reason I don't want you to put a whole piece of tape all down there to begin with is because it's hard to kind of keep things together when you do a long piece of tape. So do that on both sides. 1, 2, 3. Then
Is
take.
it okay just to measure it? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. What's that?
Is it okay just to measure it and then just use ruler and, you know,
Measure what?
just instead of like cutting out papers and then putting on there, just
Well,
measure it correctly?
measure it. What do you mean by measure it? I want to know what you mean by measure it.
Like using ruler and all that and divide it by 4 and then, you know.
You mean make your drawing smaller? This area?
Just to make like the vertical lines instead of like cutting a paper and then taping it on.
Well, if you're so the trick here is we want to get the vanishing points out from this drawing we're working on, right?
Oh, okay.
That's why we want to get these. So you have ready-made vanishing points all the way out there, right? That go with the drawing. So when you finish your drawing, theoretically you could like do that on a table and put 2 dots on your table and do it that way, right? You got to make sure the paper's in the right place every time and all that. Here we're putting these wings on the drawing so that we have these ready-made vanishing points that go with the drawing no matter what. That's why I'm having you tape them
okay.
on. Does that
Got
make
it.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So because we want the drawing to be as big as possible, utilizing this 18 by 24 inch space we have, right? So adding these wings on will give us extra space to put the vanishing points out there, okay? So once you tack this down along that seam, just take a big piece of tape and put it down. It just keeps it. Now the trick here is not to overlap these seams, because if you overlap them, right, you know, if you're, rather than butting them right up against one another, if you overlap them when you try to close that wing in, you know, to kind of save your drawing, put it away after you're done, it won't hinge perfectly, okay? So you got to just lay your paper on the table and butt them right up against one another. Then seam them up, okay, with your tape. Now the problem is you have tape there on your drawing that you have to deal with. How would you deal with that?
You tape it on the backside?
Yeah, or what I did to the students one time was like, well, yeah, you tape it on the back. No, well, actually, you're already taped it on the backside. So then you turn your paper over and put your horizon line. This is all you're doing this before you do your horizon line or anything else. So tape it, get it all put together perfectly. Turn the paper over. You don't have to worry about the tape anymore. It's on the back, right, holding your wings together. Then do your horizon line, your vanishing points. Make sure that you get your vanishing points all the way out here at the very end of the right wing, at the very end of the horizon line, at the left wing, etc., okay? Don't put a vanishing point like right here and one right here. That defeats the purpose of having this extra space out there, right? Everybody understand what I'm saying there, right? That makes sense? Okay. Yep. Okay. Because then your drawing's going to be distorted again. Then all you need to do is focus on what's happening in here using your straight edge again to, go to the various vanishing points, okay? As long as your straight edge is lined up with that vanishing point over there and this one over here, you don't have to extend a line all the way to that vanishing point. That's okay. As long as you know for sure that your ruler is lined up with that dot over there when you're making this mark over here, you don't have to stretch a line all the way when you draw, okay? Draw lightly, because you're going to be making mistakes and changing things, so always draw lightly. Make sure the vanishing point, because I've seen students do this, they'll line the one side of the ruler up, one edge of the ruler up at the vanishing point, and use the other edge of the ruler to strike their line. Can't do that. They have to be the same. Make sure they're the same edge of the ruler that you're lining up with the vanishing point when you work, okay? Okay, any questions? Long lecture, I'm sorry. The next one won't be as long, but there's a lot to digest here. Let's do this. Let's let you work the whole class period and then come back at 5:30. Okay, so send me your images. We won't take, I'll be here to answer your questions, but what we'll do at the end of this today is just go over a little bit and I'll answer any questions you might have regarding the process. So send me your images maybe around, let's say send me the images at 5:30, okay? And then we'll meet like, no, let's do this. Send me your images at 5:15 and then we'll meet at 5:30, okay? So send me what you have done today. This will take some time just to set the drawing up. Send me what you've done at 5:15, and then I'll send you an invitation at 5:30, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you went through. Okay. That's a lot of work to do, so you need the time to do that. I'll be here if you have any questions. Okay, if you want to do an individual Zoom or whatever as well. So okay. So I'll just be hanging around the computer here. Any questions? Take your time, make it look good. Be inventive if you can, but don't be overly inventive where you lose sight of the structure, okay? That's always a risk. Think about the scale of the room. Do you want to be up close into the corner? Do you want that really expansive view? Okay, all those things. And you'll do it once or twice and it'll be screwy and you won't like it and you have to change it, okay? You have to go back sometimes in the drawing to make it better, okay? No questions, right? Because you might have, your question might be somebody else's. No? Okay.